The Digimon franchise has never ceased to surprise me, and nothing perpetuates that feeling more than the video games. We've already looked at a V-Pet adventure RPG, a tabletop card game simulator, and we do still have a couple of RPGs to look at, but even those don't play like the first one, or even really all that much like each other. But today we're going to look at a kind of funny entry in Digimon's PlayStation 1 library. A party brawler. Now look, I've been doing my best so far in these videos to avoid making unwarranted comparisons between the Digimon franchise and others that it gets frequently lumped in with, mostly because those comparisons are reductive, tired, surface level, and there's not really as much of a basis for them as people always seem to assume. But this right here? This is a Smash clone. Now, while I've never been especially great at them, I'm no stranger to the world of fighting games. I'll be there day one for Street Fighter 6. I played the real classics like Sonic the Fighters, and of course, I have many fond memories of playing Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in the back of a Pizza Hut as a kid, and I have a truly deep appreciation for that game to this day.
You know, in case you couldn't tell.
But when Super Smash Bros. Hit the scene, it not only let kids duke it out as their favorite Nintendo mascots they were already familiar with, but introduced them to maybe a couple of new ones, and the simplified mechanics and controls gave life to a party brawler, an accessible pick-up-and-play fighting game where anyone can pick up the controller and play within minutes. But while this was making its rounds on the Nintendo 64, kids on the PlayStation still needed a simple mascot fighting game that they could break out at sleepovers, and well, I guess this is what they got. So how does it stack up all these years later? Is this a good way to experience the power of your favorite Digimon? Let's find out today as we take a look at Digimon Rumble Arena. It's worth noting that while the larger Digimon games did have a couple of similarities with the anime, stuff like shared locations, there wasn't a lot here in these games that kids could actually see being pulled from the television series they were watching. The clear exception is Digital Card Battle, that did share some direct story elements and characters, but a lot of that was still kind of pushed off to the wayside. Oh, and the Japanese release of that game actually did have some MIDI compositions of music from that show. Sorry, I felt silly for not mentioning it in the last review, and I had to work it in somewhere. We would get games later on that were directly based on the anime series like Data Squad or the RPG adaptation of Digimon Adventure that we never got here in the US. Figures. But Rumble Arena wasn't pulling its roster of characters from previous games on the PS1 or some obscure lore. The Digimon you could play as and the tamers that kind of accompany them are pulled directly from Digimon Adventure, 02, and Digimon Tamers. I love how the Digimon in this intro are all animated in 3D, but their tamers are just 2D images taken straight from their respective shows and superimposed over CGI backgrounds. I mean, I get it, I know why they did it this way, it's still just funny to look at. And then you get the title screen and are greeted with
Digimon Rumble Arena!
Oh, cute? I guess a different Digimon says the name of the game each time you boot it up, and nope, it's always Guilmon, and it makes a certain level of sense. Tamers was still airing around that time, and Guilmon was probably the most popular monster in the show. Well, outside of Renamon for reasons. And don't worry, you degenerates, she's in the game too. But Guilmon's English voice is also kind of obnoxious. Not always, but sometimes. I'm sorry. Kinda. I get people are attached to this, and I think it's charming because, yes, Guilmon is the best boy, but it also sounds stupid hearing it every time I go back to the title screen. Do you think anyone has asked Steve Bloom to read out a bunch of Spike Spiegel's lines, but in Guilmon's voice? I love a woman who can kick my ass. That's a little too much belly aching about cute creatures talking, though. Let's just move on to the single-player campaign, go to the character select, and...
Which Digimon are you gonna play with, huh? Which one?
Oh, jeez!
Go ahead, pick your favorite Digimon.
So from here, you can choose between some of the most popular rookie-level Digimon, and you'll play as this character in a series of battles against the rest of the roster. Pretty standard fare for a single-player mode in a fighting game. I decided to start with Gabumon, because he's a good boy, and I love him.
Gabumon, you're the Mon!
Good lord, how compressed were the audio files for the human characters? Digimon sound fine, but the tamers all sound like their audio is crushed to hell and back. What in the world happened here? Okay, you know what else is weird? The lack of music. Now, some of you that grew up with the game might be confused by what I mean, but I don't think this is normal. So I recorded this game by playing it on my PS3, and classic Wayneisboss fans will remember from my PS1 Treasure Planet review, that the PS3 can just be kind of weird about media files on PS1 discs. Sometimes the music plays, sometimes it doesn't, and you're just mashing these little digital creatures against each other with nothing but an eerie silence accompanying the action. And it's kind of funny. I did decide to try playing this game a little bit on original hardware, and sure enough, the music is actually there, and it's fine. Nothing about it is amazing, but it's certainly serviceable. And yeah, every now and again you get some tracks that actually go pretty hard. Actually, speaking of which, they did it again. The Japanese version of this game has recreations of music from the anime. I get that audiences in other regions wouldn't be as familiar with these tracks, but it's not like the replacements are compositions they'll recognize or worthy replacements for hearing Braveheart playing in the background. The stages themselves are okay. Each one will contain hazards specific to that arena. Again, that might sound familiar. Now, what's interesting here is that the specialty of each Digimon actually comes into play here, split across fire, water, and nature specialties. Not only are certain Digimon stronger or weaker against other Digimon of a different specialty, but some specialties are weak to certain terrain, so you don't want your nature Digimon falling into a stage hazard on a fire stage. This is so needless. It's like the game is going out of its way to unbalance itself. Why is this a thing? As for the actual visual appearance of each stage, I mean, they're fine. Some are pretty basic, others are... Okay, yeah, there's not a lot of creativity on display here. I like to imagine this one is just Sky Sanctuary though, because everything has to lead back to Sonic eventually. Honestly, it would have been nice to see a few more familiar locations like Factorial Town or Infinity Mountain, or maybe some kind of game-specific ones like File City. I know it's not canon to the anime, but I think it would have been a fun way to merge the branches of the franchise a little bit. Now, you might have realized that I've been talking about pretty much every aspect of this game except the actual gameplay, and well, yeah. You sure do press buttons to attack. You get your normal attacks from the square button and different finishing attacks tied to the triangle and circle buttons. Circle is usually going to be some form of ranged attack, good for taking on opponents at a distance, and triangle will typically be a bit more specialized, normally a stronger melee attack. This can take several different forms though, like one Digimon might have a triangle tech that attacks directly in front of them, whereas a Digimon like Gabumon will use an upwards attack. As for directional inputs and such during any of these, yeah, that's not really gonna do you any good here. Simple as Smash's controls are, they do offer a certain level of variety, where pressing down while using your attack buttons or even being airborne while doing so will change the resulting attack. Not so much the case here. The basics of the combat pretty much boil down to spamming the square button, and on occasion, you can spice things up with a special attack. Somebody out there right now really wants to tell me all about just how in-depth this combat actually is, but if they have to explain that depth to me because the game itself didn't put it on display, I think that's saying something. There also aren't really pickup items in this game, but you can grab these little Digimon cards scattered throughout each stage that give you a temporary buff, or in most cases, a beefed up projectile. Now let's see, what else? You can block attacks, yeah, and oh, right, you can Digivolve. As you fight or take damage, you fill up a Digivolve meter, and when it's full, you can hit the R1 button to Digivolve to a new form. Again, it's hilarious how clear the audio quality is for Digimon speaking, but when the tamer calls out to them,
Patamon Warp Digivolve!
Did TK's voice just crack?
Digivolve!
Your Digimon will evolve straight to their Mega form, skipping the forms between, meaning Gabumon will turn into Metal Garurumon, Agumon will evolve into War Greymon, Yilmon to Gallantmon, and Gatomon will evolve into Magnadramon. So you've got Gatomon in this game, but she doesn't evolve into Anjuomon. Then why are we even here? As you can imagine, these new forms beef up your stats and offer new attacks, but they're commanded the same way as your previous form. You do have a boost here, but you're not invincible, and if you're playing a lower form against a Mega level Digimon, you don't have to worry too much, because it's still incredibly easy to lock your opponents into a chain. Not a combo, mind you, the mechanics aren't nearly that interesting, but every Digimon in this game is so heavy, and the animations for pretty much every move they make are so slow that you really don't have much to worry about once you've got the upper hand. You see this? Gameplay. And this was after I turned up the CPU difficulty. You do also have to deal with how much this Digivolving animation breaks up the pace of the actual matches too. I'm sure the game needs a second to load in the new model and its appropriate data, but it's still kind of jarring and it always feels like it just takes away from the moment a bit. Now, this Megaform doesn't last forever. You only have until the meter depletes and then you have to fill it up again. After Digivolving, you can also just hit the R1 button again and it auto depletes the meter for a charged up attack like War Greymon using Terraforce. This game is so broken. Do I sound unenthusiastic? Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be. It's just that everything I just said is, well, that's it. That's everything. And I'm making it sound like I hated this game, and I really didn't, believe me. I have played worse. The issue mostly comes from how drawn out everything feels, where each encounter with another character feels longer than it needs to be, and the action itself is honestly pretty slow already just due to the amount of weight everyone seems to have, and how long it takes to move from one animation to the next. The pacing might be this game's biggest weakness. The matches in the single player are best out of 3 against each opponent, meaning that you've got to fight everybody at least twice before you can move on to the next stage and keep things moving, and every once in a while when you've beaten enough foes. I'm not sorry about the comparison. Yeah, there's a few mini-games scattered through here, like destroying a bunch of targets, shooting hoops, and mashing a button really fast. How are these? They're okay. They're okay. They're certainly not bad, but they sure are here, I guess. So, keep mashing your way through these matches to get to the end and take on the final boss, Reapermon. If there's any added context to this guy, or any semblance of plot surrounding him, or why he's the adversary for everyone, I totally missed it, and I'm not convinced such context exists. Hey, at the very least, he's got a stupid amount of attack range and actually manages to put up a small amount of challenge, so at the very least, he is a bit more engaging than what's come before. And once you've beaten Reapermon, the credits roll, and now you've got him unlocked as a character. In fact, you can unlock quite a few characters by beating the campaign with different Digimon, and there can sometimes be extra prerequisites, like you'll need to beat the game with both Agumon and Gabumon to get access to Omnimon. All of my complaints up to this point aside, a part of my inner child awakened when I first got to be able to select him and mess around with him for a bit. And yeah, when you select a higher level Digimon as your character, you only use the meter for their ultimate attack and nothing else, which makes sense. You can unlock quite a few additional Digimon, with most of them being the upgraded forms of the base characters, but some other cool ones like Blackboard Greymon, Impmon, or Imperial Dramon Paladin mode, and can you imagine if somebody just has no context for Digimon and they're just hearing all of these words getting thrown out into the ether? And that is Digimon Rumble Arena. There's a couple of other cute features. I like that by holding down the R1 button when you select a character, certain ones like the original Adventure cast will have their images swapped from their O2 appearance to their original younger looks. And as simple as it is, I gotta admit, I think that's a legitimately cool touch. The rest of the game is, well, what you make of it. It's a party game at the end of the day. The majority of fun that you get from it is gonna be sitting down with a friend and just embracing the chaos of this janky, uneven brawler. It's not great, and believe me, you're much better off with a wide variety of other fighting game options, but if you and your friends are Digimon fans, this is a good way to soak up a half hour of your time until you decide to play Guilty Gear instead. As for recommending this game as a single player experience, no. This was one I didn't have a huge amount of patience for, to be honest. The single player mode just drags in a way I haven't experienced in a fighting game before. But there were sequels to Rumble Arena that we'll tackle one day. Who knows, maybe they refined the formula and made something really special out of it. I'm actually interested in checking the follow-ups out sometime and seeing what was improved. As for now, I can only recommend the most curious of fans to check out Digimon Rumble Arena. But card games, party brawlers, these have been some fun detours, but I know what y'all have actually been waiting for, and maybe it's time to finally stop running away from it. There might be a couple of side quest reviews here and there, but our next major stop is gonna be deep in the digital dungeons of Digimon World 2. Until then, and I really do need to get better about promoting this, the best way to support me is on Patreon. If even a quarter of my subscribers all donated $1 a month, I could seriously consider making this a full-time gig and make you all so much more content way more often. When I say every little bit counts, I mean it. That being said, even just being here, watching these videos, sharing them around, all of that good stuff, that is support too. And for that, thank you. For those of you interested in contributing to my Patreon, my top tier patrons get to see these videos 2 days early. You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Sunset City, whichever you prefer, links in the description, and of course, as always, spread the word, tell your friends, and until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. See you next mission. Hey Hey there everyone, and thank you so much for watching. I'm glad this one didn't take me 3 years to get out there. It still took a little longer than I would have liked, but it wasn't as big of a gap as some of my others have been. That being said, the next one, Digimon World 2, that is a hefty game. It's gonna be a big video, and please understand it is gonna take me a while to get that one put together, but while I won't have any other main reviews coming out before that, I might have some smaller like side quest stuff. We'll have to see how that shakes down. Of course, I would not be able to make any of this if it wasn't for you, the viewers, and of course, my wonderful Patreon supporters. And I do need to give a very special shout out to my top tier patrons this month. They are Brendan Hess, Broski, Earl Valco, Jeremiah Harrison, Letterick, McKenzel, Mr. Dr. SP, Dr. Pending, Nickel Plated, Patricia Marcoux, Cinderin7, Snapkick, and Cirrus the Skeptic. Man, there are so many of you. Thank you all so much. I really do appreciate that. You guys make this possible, and you make it worth it. With all of that said, thanks once again for watching. I have been Wayne, and I'll see you next mission.